Now let's go ahead and move to our second question. And Revae, you actually touched a little bit upon this, but scaffolding. So I'd love to know from all of you, how do you work with scaffolding whenever students are reading or writing? And where do you think Japanese students are more likely to need scaffolding in the online classroom? Saito Sensei, if you don't mind, let's start with you, please.
Okay, I thought I was gonna talk about the difficult part, but like, okay, all right, that's fine. So the scaffolding. In my, well, actually, like I was gonna first say, like, thank you very much, Dr. Luft Sensei, because I was gonna talk about the assessment. Like, online teaching isn't my like something special, and I wanted to say like online is no longer a substitute for in-person like teaching. Online is something like we really need to use like our knowledge to make it special, and we have to put it a lot of effort for making it works. And like I was thinking of difficulty. I know like I have to talk about something different, but I just wanted to follow up with the Raf Sensei. And the most challenging part for me is the assessment that I was gonna say, and I had the whole answer for that, but it's okay. All right. So and scaffolding for the writing and reading, right? Yes, and it's also connect with my online courses. And I actually used my online course. It's the fully synchronous course, but also my course is flipped learning, flipped classroom, and synchronous online and flipped learning approach. It's combined. It's called something called Sofra, and I've been using this Sofra method and for my all online teaching. And it's honestly that's the makes scaffolding is much easier because of the structure, and student can get used to it every time we have online classes, which like my college twice a week. And like they have to start with step one of Sofra, which is the pre-work and pre-assignment. So, and then like we follow the Sofra cycle, and then like usually start with the Tadoku time, extensive reading time, which was introduced by Cook Sensei and Takahashi Sensei, and in 2022 at the one of the conference, and it's called Chokoto Tadoku. And like we are using part of the classroom time for engaging the reading time. And that's the start of my entire course design, and starting with a lot of input by using the Tadoku time. But I have to a little bit of like give them like the approach that's Tadoku time, like don't ever stop like start using dictionaries, and they have to keep reading. And most of my student, except for the international student, exchange student, international student, they are grown up with the most of the public education system in New York, and they build a good fundamental of context clue already from the K-12 education. And with using this context clue, and I emphasis on it is very important. It's the Japanese, probably new language, but you have to use the picture and you have to use the context, and then like try to figure out. It's like learning backwards and like using that technique, and they have to build their vocabularies and grammars. So, and don't stop. And oh my gosh, we don't know this kanji. Saito sensei never taught me this. No, that's not the approach. Like they have to figure out. Okay, so that this Chokoto Tadoku time is really helps my student to develop that attitude. And also that like this project reads at the end of the course, and final project, it's called We Author project. We Author is student will become the Tadoku book authors. But doing this, like I'm not giving them like, oh, now you have to write the book. It's not like that. Okay, we are using a lot of techniques, and I learned from the CUNY Graduate Center. And one of the method I would like to introduce here is the group writing. Okay, no, I'm sorry, group reading and writing. And group reading, we as a project, we ask students to put their works on the online platform that CUNY offers, and everybody can see their materials. It's the open educational resources already, so student can read the previous year cohort student wrote those like books. And then using these books, and we introduce as a pre-work Kisho Tenketsu format. It's the very Japanese, like the format that's for introducing and development and twist, and then conclusion. And together with them, and we are going to read as a group, and like how your previous year's student work into this Kisho Tenketsu, and also what's happened. So they start to learn the format of the writings, and they start to build like idea. Oh, okay, so we can do the same things. And then so like we do a lot of practice with using this one. So they, by the time like they have to write individually, like the final project, they have confidence and they are ready to write their idea into the work. So like my course has together with this flipped learning and also like this course design and entire group, and together with Hunter College is very unique. Instead of TA, we call it senpai supporters, and I receive senpai supporter and with the advanced student, and they are always there with me and they are supporting the students learn. So that's also like roles in a big support of like student learning. Okay, thank you.
Saito Sensei, I love it. When you said flip classroom, immediately my heart leapt because I'm so in love with the idea of it. So thank you for sharing that with us. But it seems like your students are going through a progression where they are working with maybe a kanji they don't know, and they have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
So they move through that process, and then at the very end, you're really getting into those upper level blooms where you're telling the students to teach me what I have taught you. And I absolutely love your story and how that's going in and working with the students. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I do apologize. I just realized I hadn't actually asked you about the aspects that you think are most challenging. And you mentioned assessment, which, yes, absolutely, that is definitely challenging. And you told us quite a bit about the assessments. But anything else you want to add to that question? And I do apologize for not asking you initially, but just generally challenging, what's challenging about teaching Japanese online?
Well, if I can add one more thing, I was gonna introduce the word marugoshi. And I don't know, like here, like the marugoshi is the what I wanted to say about the assessment, like student, especially online classrooms, like they are in front of the laptop or like iPad, like any devices. Okay, so they already have like some like the supporting system for them, and then like assessment, it's hard. Okay, so like I said, I teach online and also in person. In person, like in this context, it's rather easy. Like I just tell student, okay, put away your devices and like no cheating, and you have to put textbook away, worksheet away. So that's it. But like for the online teaching, I really, really, really need to follow the World Readiness National Standard, like 3 modes of communication. And I include for my college class interpersonal speaking and also presentational speaking. And I tell them this has to be spontaneous, and especially for the interpersonal speaking, it has to be unrehearsed. And I really need to assess their proficiency rather than performance. So I often include those like proficiency in my course, but like it's like taking time, and like some student feels, oh, I don't know, I don't remember, and they start in English. So like I really need to change my student mindset as well. So I keep telling them it's okay, it's okay, it's the formative assessment like during the class, and let's get like, let's make the mistakes here and we can learn together. That's the like message I always say to them. Thank
Love
you.
that message of let's make the mistakes here because that is ultimately how we level up by making those mistakes. And you're creating that environment where they can get uncomfortable and be okay with being uncomfortable. And that's really going to help them level up in the ladder of proficiency. Thank you so much for that, Saito Sensei. Great feedback there. And then let's go to Maeda Sensei. So it's the same second question. Which aspects are, sorry, how do you work with the scaffolding with when students are reading or writing? And then where are Japanese students more likely to need that scaffolding in the online classroom?
Okay, so these scaffolding strategies are not exclusive to online learning or the Japanese language. So if you are already doing the great, scaffolding in the regular class, just transfer that one, right? Then I usually break the reading and writing tasks into three phase: before, during, and after. So before the task, I often use a KWL chart, like what you know about this topic or what you want to know, what you learned about this topic. So using KWL to tap into what the students already know about the topic of the reading or writing, or get them curious about that. Then you can do this on the asynchronous day. When I do that, I usually use Padlet, and during the synchronous session, I use the Zoom whiteboard. Then talk about that. And this is a great time that I can also introduce the vocab key words the students really needs to know to go through this reading and writing. And also, you can layer activities, like start with the smaller chunks, like when they are reading, for example, skimming for known element, like, find the kana or the katakana words or number or dates or keywords. And then let student guess about what this reading is about. Then you can also build a keywords together with the students and give them, okay, you can use these keywords. Seems like everybody needs to know this one. And then the next is during the task. I often encourage, well, if you are doing this during the synchronous session, I often encourage to work with peer. That's okay to ask your partner or, so, and then get the peer feedback so that you don't feel like they are doing it all alone, right? And help each other. And you can also provide additional supports or resources, like, for example, for the reading, I can add some hiragana, or there's two apps that students can add hiragana with. And then also, particularly for the asynchronous session, text-to-speech tool, like there's an AI tool called Natural Readers. They are really helpful. The students cannot, read these kanji, but then use this text-to-speech tool. Then, oh, it's reading out. Oh, I see. Now I understand, right? So I can provide some of these like helping tools. And then after the task, I sometimes ask students to reflect on what they learned and how they get through the task, right? So you can do this asynchronously or synchronously with using like a Google form or a Padlet or a Zoom whiteboard. So you just ask these questions. What was the most difficult part? What strategies did you use? What's the keyword you needed to know? What's the new word you learned, right? Etc. So I think this really helps students, give them a chance to think about their own learning process and the strategies. Right? That's all.
I love that. And it is important as we're leveling up in our Japanese to know, okay, these are some of the things that I sometimes struggle with, or maybe these are some of my strengths. So I love that you have that way for students to really reflect on their own learning styles. It's excellent. Thank you so much, Maeda Sensei. And let's go to Love Sensei next. And again, the same question. How do you work with scaffolding when students are reading or writing? And where are Japanese students more likely to need to use scaffolding in an online classroom?
Yeah, I'll first just reiterate something that Maeda Sensei said before. Um, when I first started doing online teaching, I had a really hard time with handwriting and really getting students, to understand how to write characters and how it's different, just because it was really hard to demonstrate. And the university gave me like a Lenovo tablet and a stylus, and it just was not working. But I was able to do a bit of negotiating and I got an iPad and an Apple Pen. And once that happened, then I could actually demonstrate, in an online environment how to write. The pencil feature is actually sensitive to how hard you press with the Apple Pen on the tablet. So you can demonstrate how to hane, and when you do it in the online environment, it looks like you're actually, fading that stroke out. So I thought, that ended up for me just being like, absolutely necessary for doing handwriting in an online environment. Um, just couple other things for scaffolding. Like Saito Sensei said, I think our students, sometimes they see a reading passage, and they see a couple kanji they don't know, and they just, they think I don't know this, right? So getting them to be strategic readers and using reading strategies when they approach a text, I think is very important. One way that we do that at the early stages is as soon as they know katakana, we start giving them worksheets that are authentic materials. We'll do newspaper articles, for example, um, and we'll have questions about the article that they can figure out if they know katakana and maybe, use a little bit of common sense, right? Um, so for example, like there'll be a sports article, sports articles are pretty straightforward. You're going to find out who won, who lost, how it was done, right? And we'll ask questions like, where was this team from? What were the names of the teams? Where are the teams from, right? And if they're able to scan that article for katakana words and they're able to figure out, the word from English that the katakana word represents, then they're able to actually figure out a lot of information about what's going on in that newspaper article. So I think that's a good way to get students used to the idea that they don't need to know every single word that they're reading to get a lot of content out of something. I think I'll also mention just for katakana, we do a bit of work just with, lots of practice, but also going over like rules for that as a scaffolding for helping students to know how to use those. So, for example, like TH in English often gets realized as an S or a Z when it's put in katakana. Or if an English word ends in a consonant, oftentimes it'll have an U sound added to the end for katakana. Giving students those rules and then giving them practice so they can really get used to working with those words and figuring out what the original word is. Lastly, I'll just mention a couple of the strategies that we teach when we're doing reading strategies. We talk about, hypothesizing. We talk about reading things through twice. We talk about guessing, and I spend a little bit of time actually talking about what makes good guessing and what makes bad guessing. Um, I think the educational system trains our students a little bit to think outside the box, which usually isn't a bad thing. But if you're dealing with a reading that is just written for a person, right? Um, Naturally, like a guess that is more prototypical, that is more common, is going to be a better guess than something that's just kind of like way outside there, right? Um, we I did one article, it was a newspaper article with my students, and it's about a zoo, right? And then there's this unfamiliar kanji that's clearly an animal, So guessing like a tiger or a lion or something, I mean, that's like pretty good. That makes sense, right? Guessing like an ocelot or um, a pangolin or something that's like not like prototypical, there's just less chance that that's actually going to be what they're talking about, right? So we talk about what makes a good guess and the fact that, stuff that's more common, that's more prototypical is more likely to be right in this type of situation. So that's just a little bit of the support we provide for our students.
In the West, I think we spend a lot of time really trying to push our students outside of the box. We want them to be innovative and think up new things. But the animal analogy, just kind of sticking with that, typically where I am in the United States, if I hear hoof prints outside, it's probably a horse and not a zebra. So yes, we want to make sure that we're steering our students in what's more likely versus maybe something a little bit more untraditional. Thank you for that, Love Sensei. And then Bostwick Sensei, let's wrap this question up with you. And once again, same question. How do you work with scaffolding when your students are reading or writing? And where are Japanese students more likely to need that scaffolding in the online classroom?
So I was thinking about this as other people were talking. I had a different answer, but I was also thinking about the fact that in Japanese, that if you're writing it correctly, all of the letters from every single word in your sentence are all connected together. And you can't tell where one word stops and the next word starts if you're not familiar with the vocabulary. So I think it's important that we expose our students to a number of vocabulary and the vocabulary that are utilized in your text, so then they can look at how they can break that text apart into the vocabulary chunks that you're wanting them to know. Because otherwise they don't know, am I supposed to read this as wa or ha? They don't know because it's all connected together and they don't know where to stop. So I think teaching them the vocabulary words that are going to be utilized in your paragraph is really, really important. And we have students now that many people have talked about the ability to use different types of tools to be able to do their assignments for them, so to speak. So we have some students coming to Japanese 3 who actually really don't know all of the hiragana yet. They have somehow been able to get through the courses before us without knowing all of the hiragana. So sometimes we have to scaffold their reading at the hiragana level and maybe give them little hints. Is this ma or is it ha? Try to get them to figure out, okay, let me see. I know it's one of those two, but which one is it? Also, I think it's important that we practice vocabulary. And in our coaching materials that I'm working on now, students are going to categorize the vocabulary. They'll have their list of vocabulary and say, okay, are these things that you do at a festival or are these things that you can eat at a festival? So which one are those? So that gives them a chance to read the vocabulary, to practice the vocabulary, and then the coach can also help them with the pronunciation of the vocabulary if necessary. Another idea I got was that maybe our students need scaffolding who they don't know how to read the sentence as a whole. And in the online environment, sometimes it's quiet again, right? They're just waiting, but you don't know. Is it the first character they're having trouble with? Is it the middle character? Is it the last character? What is the problem here? We are not sure. So we need to create a safe learning environment for our students so that they feel safe to make mistakes, that they feel safe that if their pronunciation is terrible, it is okay. We're not laughing at them. It's the whole reason we're here is to help them learn. So it might also be a good idea that some of the sentences that the coach just goes ahead and reads them aloud to the students at first, has them say it offline, or you can have them turn their mic on and practice that pronunciation, and then go and have them read some paragraphs or sentences on their own, but they've already heard some of that pronunciation in advance from the coach, so it won't be starting from scratch for them. So I was just thinking that that might be some ways that they could scaffold that reading for them.
I love all that, Revae. And just a little bit of background for those of you not familiar with the program we have at North Carolina Virtual Public School. We are very lucky to work with a group of coaches that meet students in Zoom rooms, very much like this, and work with them in small groups. So they're able to get that instant feedback. And it's also just a fun, positive learning environment. I see several of my coaches here that I work with, and I'm very, very lucky to work with such an amazing team. So just want to thank all of them. But it's a great resource for the students, and we're very lucky to have it.